Hello from Boulder. Can everyone in Zoom hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. We're going to get started in just a moment here.
Yeah, well, you out? Yes. Is it so bad? It is. Could you pass it this way? Can you pass yours? I certainly can. Oh, thank you. Pens that came here. Circulation. Yeah.
Well, you can have this one. We're gonna share the pen.
Yeah. Okay. You're gonna share. I feel like we could corral them in. Michelle, are there, how many people are on the Zoom call?
We share a pen.
Yeah. Oh, well, they're not that long. So they, I haven't looked at them, so okay. All right. Yeah. So, yeah. They could,
Virginia has a script, so it's.
ready? Yeah, sure. I think what I'll do is I'll just have everyone introduce their own groups and we'll just go through it. Okay, let me see. So we can, okay, those are our people, okay, over there. Just want to make sure I introduce my. Yeah, and they are being seen now. Okay. Okay, welcome. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Michelle, are we ready? So this is the Journal Editors Talk About Submission and Publishing on Language and Culture. We are pleased to have both the audience here as well as a Zoom audience and then an audience on Gather. And I think what we're particularly excited about with respect to this is that because of this live stream, this session will be recorded so that people can, who are interested in submitting to journals, can watch it later and get a better feel for what the many journals represented here today are looking for. And I just want to say I'm Kira Hall. I organized this, but I am also an editor, one of the 3 co-editors of the journal Gender and Language. Also represented here today is the Journal of Language and Sexuality, the Journal of Linguistic Anthropology, Journal of Sociolinguistics, Language, Culture and Society, Language and Society, and Signs and Society. So we have maybe more editors in the room than non-editors, but I'm excited about the discussion and certainly our ultimate goal is to be able to allow questions from all of you, from our Zoom group as well, and to have a good discussion about the status of publishing in the area of language, society, and culture. So I think the format is very informal. We're just going to go through the journals in alphabetical order and just have one primary spokesperson, but I hope to hear from everybody here representing the journals. So we'll start with my colleague here, Rodrigo Borba, who will be representing gender and language. And I believe Mie Hiramoto is, are you online, Mie? Can you wave?
Hello.
Okay. Perfect. So
hello, I'm Rodrigo Borba, and with Kira Hall and Mia Hiramoto, we are co-editors of the journal Gender and Language, and we do not have associate editors. I was just talking to Virginia during breakfast. So the three of us do basically the same amount of work. So I've brought Mia prepared a very nice PowerPoint, but because of the informality of the session, I'll just give you some information, general information about the journal, and then what the things that we have been doing to support publication, especially from early career scholars, grad students, and also scholars, non-English speakers, and especially scholars from the Global South. So the journal is published by Equinox, a publisher in the UK. We publish four issues a year. We are next month, this month, we'll be publishing our 16th issue. So it's our sweet 16th anniversary this year. Well, in terms of submissions, I've got numbers from last year, 2021. We received 180 submissions, which is quite a lot of submissions for a niche journal. We just publish papers that discuss gender and or sexuality from a linguistic or discursive perspective. So that's quite a lot. In terms of response from the editors, either with rejects and the results of the reviews, it usually takes an average of about 172 days to accept a paper, and to reject a paper 10 days. That's quite quick. We do quite a lot of screening. In terms of the types of submissions that we accept, the journal has a very clear feminist, queer, trans, and non-binary perspective on gender. But despite that, despite the fact that this is clearly stated in the journal webpage, we still get a lot of submissions from that take an essentialist perspective on gender. Lots of submissions that discuss how men speak differently from women. Of course, these submissions are rejected at our desktop rejected. We also get lots of submissions that discuss gender in language, but not in society. So there is this missing link to discuss like grammatical gender and the social dimensions of grammatical gender. So those papers are not the kind of paper that we also publish. In terms of acceptance rate, we have a 16% acceptance rate from the submissions that we get. And Kira also asked us to give some numbers regarding impact factor. So, and we are very proud to share the fact that the journal has been increasing in terms of impact factor. In 2019, for example, our impact factor was 0.619. And in 2020, it went up to 0.976, which is quite significant for a niche journal like Gender and Language, and quite a young journal also, 16 years. We have, in terms of formats that we publish, of course, we publish research papers, but we have been trying to diversify the kind of genres that we publish. So when we took over the editorship, we started publishing year in review essays. So we invite scholars to review the state of the art of the field. In 2019, for example, Jeremy Calder published an essay on interrogating normativities. The year in review for 2020 was written by Jaspal Singh, in which he makes a very important case for going south. And the 2021 year in review will be published this year and will be authored by Branca Falabella Fabricio, my colleague at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. And also last year, we celebrated the field of gender and language with a theme series in which we a retrospective of the last 30 years of the field. So we invited scholars, senior scholars and also younger scholars to reflect on the last 30 years of the field. And that was an interesting editorial experience. So we published several essays in all the issues, all the 4 issues, and each issue had a specific topic. The first one was about politics, the second one was about practice, the third one about intersectionality, and the last one about place. And something that we take quite a lot of pride in our work as editors is that we do quite a lot of work in supporting early career scholars and also non-native speakers. And this is done both in pre-production and also during the production stage. Mia and I, for example, work quite directly with authors whose papers got revised and submit. We meet authors who are struggling with the revisions because sometimes it can be quite overwhelming. And then Kira, once the paper is accepted, Kira and our wonderful assistant line editor, is that the position? Assistant line editor, Aidan Parrish, they do quite a lot of editing and streamlining, working directly with the authors. And this is done not only for non-native speakers, but also to English speakers, because we view the submission process, the publication process also as a learning opportunity to everyone involved. So that's what I had said. Would you like to share something?
Thank you so much. And I think we need to keep moving because we want to have questions at the end, but I'm going to follow up. Our next journal, I guess in alphabetical order is, well, I don't even know, somewhere in here, but Journal of Language and Sexuality. And that's also Mia Hiramoto, who's working with both journals. So Mia, can you talk with us about your journal?
Yes, hello. Thank you. I quickly changed my background. So I'm representing both journals. And everybody can hear me? Yeah. So I'm going to, if I share slides, can all of you see this? Maybe not, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So here, thank you. So hi everyone. I am Mie Hiramoto, and just now I am representing Journal of Language and Sexuality. The general editor is my good friend Heiko Mochenbacher of Western Norway University of Applied Sciences, who sends his regrets for not being able to come here today. We have Lucy Jones as a book review editor, and yeah, I'm the associate editor. Basic info of the journal can be found in the link that I will put in a chat later. So this is the latest issue, 11.1. The Journal of Language and Sexuality aims to present research on discursive formations of sexuality, including sexual desire, sexual identifications, sexual politics, and sexuality in diaspora communities. And we are loosely connected to the Lavender Languages and Linguistics conferences. So we only, I'll talk about this a bit later too. We only issue every year, 2 issues per year for a volume, but we have very interesting papers. The first issue of this year contains our friend Rodrigo's paper that everybody must read. Fantastic work. I just mentioned briefly language and Journal of Language and Sexuality is connected with Languages and Linguistics. So if you are attending this year's conference and would like to submit your papers, please do consider us. Yeah, it will be held next month from the 23rd to the 25th. And one of the keynote speakers features, Tommaso Milani, who is here. Very exciting. Now, as of 2022, we are in year 11 and counting. The journal receives not as many papers so much, about 11 submissions per year on average, but the numbers have been higher towards the last few years, especially after COVID. Submission has increased. And these numbers, I have to check with Heiko, but may not include special issue paper submissions. We have had 8 special issues, and we accept special issue proposals on rolling basis. So if you have anything in mind, please email Heiko. Acceptance rate is 56% on average, and we estimate the timeline between submission and publication to be about 1.5 years. Right now, we have a bit of a backlog because we had 2 special issues last year. We try to work as quickly as possible. And our papers, when you first submit it, we ask authors to keep it between 8,000 to 9,000 words. Now, the matrix, compared to esteemed journal editors in their journals, our niche journal, the numbers are not so fantastic, but as presented earlier, we do publish important and high quality papers. If your libraries do not have subscriptions to Journal Language and Sexuality, please check and request. Please. Okay, moving on. Now to answer questions raised by Kira, which is very important. And we do this in gender and language too, but we do support emerging scholars and scholars from the global south and non-English dominant regions by actively reaching out to invite these people to submit the papers, especially at conference sites or workshops. I believe editorial support for non-English speakers is given for accepted papers, as I know for sure that Heiko carefully reads these manuscripts. For initial submissions, we advise ESL scholars like me to get their manuscripts proofread. That will be a good thing. And we publish papers in a variety of formats, like special issues, as I mentioned. We recently published the 10th anniversary reflection issue that was about a year ago, which features contributions by both super established scholars, as well as early career scholars or a graduate student scholar. So we do try to invite different types of people to submit to our journal. Okay, that was the presentations I wanted to share. I'm gonna stop here now. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. And now I want to turn to the flagship journal of the Society for Linguistic Anthropology, the Journal of Linguistic Anthropology. And we have a number of people represented here today, I'm pleased to say, so I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you introduce everybody.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Sonia Das. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Linguistic Anthropology. To my left, I have Christina Davis, who is the book review editor also, of the journal. And then I also have on Zoom 2 of our associate editors, Jennifer Delfino and Chantal Tetreault. And we have an additional associate editor, Farzad Karimzad. So I just thought I'd keep it pretty brief because I think that it would be important just to take questions. So just in terms of basic facts, we received 143 manuscripts in 2021. The acceptance rate is about 52.5%. And so that takes into consideration the rejections that get desk rejected mostly. Most of the rejections are at that level. I think the most important thing, and I was going to say, one of the things that I think that we pride ourselves on at the Journal of Linguistic Anthropology is trying to have a pretty speedy process. And so I wasn't able to really figure out the time that it takes for an average submissions, but in my mind, at least, it's about 4 to 5 months, depending on the number of revisions. So in terms of the criteria that I'm going to go over some of the criteria for the journal. In sort of defining itself as the flagship journal for the Journal of Linguistic Anthropology, we have supported articles that engage significantly with linguistic anthropological literature and related literatures in sociolinguistics and applied linguistics. We also look for journals that are strongly ethnographic, although this has changed somewhat. There's been an increasing number of submissions of journals interested in looking at media. And with the pandemic, this is something that we've been considering also as important contributions. And then one thing that I want to point out is that the peer review process is so integral to the journal's success. And so if you submit and have an article accepted, we will definitely be in touch with you to be a peer reviewer, because that's really what runs the journal, and we take peer reviews very seriously. And then last thing I just want to mention in terms of supporting non-English native dominant speakers, we have in the last year now have copy editing services that I save for our non-English dominant speakers. And we're hoping that will be able to be expanded as we renegotiate a new contract with the AAA portfolio. And by 2023, we're hoping to have copy editing services for everybody. So don't quote me on this, but it's looking very promising. I think I'll stop now and see if, should we move on to the next journal, or should I move it on to other people from my team?
Yeah, why don't you, I think there's a couple people on the Zoom call.
great.
You could.
And I can say something briefly now.
Yes. Okay.
I just want to say that we publish a lot of book reviews from scholars at all career stages, from very junior to very senior. And we've had a lot of success having graduate students write reviews, and it's a really great networking opportunity. And in some cases, they would work with their advisor or mentor on the review. So it's something that's worked out pretty well. And they're also quite interdisciplinary, right? The book being reviewed doesn't have to be written by a linguistic anthropologist per se, but related to language. And often the review will talk about its relevance to linguistic anthropology. Thank you.
And on Zoom?
Maybe if Jennifer Delfino would like to speak. I can't see anybody, so I'm not sure.
Sure. I think that one of the things that we've discussed moving forward is increasing our social media presence for some more publicity and public engagement. So that's one thing that I will be working on with Cameron Zarabzada, our social media coordinator on.
Yes, we're definitely looking forward to Jennifer's input on the social media, which I have been kind of lagging behind on. And then I also want to introduce Chantal Tetreault.
Hi, it's great to see everybody here. I'm just so happy to be a member of the team with everybody. And it seems like we're really trying to move forward on improving inclusion and diversity of submissions. So we're going to, the editorial team, the associate editorial team will be trying to draw up a plan, a proposal for the board to review around inclusion and diversity for the journal of all sorts of kinds of diversity and inclusion. So I'm really happy to be a part of that. And we're thinking about starting a mentorship program around the editorial board having maybe a mentorship program through the process of submission for a select group of submitters. So more about that, but lovely to be here with you. I wish I were there in person. Thanks, and great to work with Sonia. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And now I want to turn to the Journal of Sociolinguistics. We're very pleased to have Virginia Zavala with us, who is, of course, one of our keynotes for this conference and was invited to be a keynote, I believe, before she became editor of Journal of Sociolinguistics. So, yes, of course.
Hello, everybody. As you know, the Journal of Sociolinguistics, as its name implies, is a sociolinguistic journal in its broad sense of the term and its wide spectrum of research on language in society. Since January of 2022, Monica Heller's term has passed to Sari Pietikainen from the University of Jyväskylä in Finland and to me from the Universidad Católica in Peru as co-editors-in-chief. And Sari is very sorry she can't be here, but she says hi to everybody. We publish papers within a wide range of perspectives, topics, and sociolinguistic subdisciplines, such as linguistic anthropology, language policy, conversation analysis, discourse analysis, variationism, linguistic ethnography, among others. Nevertheless, what is key for us is that the authors address both the social and the language dimension of the phenomenon under study. On the one hand, there are some articles that are basically linguistic, but with little social discussion, such as some of the ones based on first-wave variationist approaches, non-critical corpus work, or more classic conversation analysis, to name some examples. On the other hand, there are also articles that are mainly social, but do not address and theorize the role of language in the phenomenon under study, as the ones that favor content analysis of texts or an abstract discussion of ideologies. For research articles, we are expecting the authors to address three things: a clear sociolinguistic question or phenomenon, a theory to locate the sociolinguistic question within previous sociolinguistic work, and language analysis to show how this plays out in language use. We encourage authors to tell a research story, to go beyond the descriptive, and to provide real and nuanced analysis and not only commentary. In addition, the Journal of Sociolinguistics looks for articles that provide critical sociolinguistic discussions that is accessible to a broad sociolinguistic audience, beyond the technicalities of a particular subfield. Although the papers may use some jargon specific to a certain subdiscipline, this cannot prevent a reader outside this subdiscipline from understanding the key discussion of the paper. This could happen, for example, when the paper analyzes texts within an hermetic technicality from a specific discourse analysis paradigm, or approaches phonological variation with a very specialized statistical layout. Beyond this, we expect the articles and the topics addressed to be appealing for a wide and multilingual readership interested in the connection between language and society. This implies addressing broad issues or questions in sociolinguistics and sociolinguistic theory. We encourage authors to be explicit in relation to the relevance of the paper and the so what question for a wide audience. In order to reach a diverse audience within sociolinguistics, we also have other genres apart from research articles, such as book reviews, review articles, and dialogue sections with opinion pieces involving areas of broad interest and invited commentaries. We published this year a dialogue section on sociolinguistics and sign language, for example, and we have also published recently in Early View a dialogue section on sociolinguistics and waste. Something that has characterized this journal since its beginnings is its international character. 25 years ago, its founders claimed that the goal for the journal was to become an integrative forum for international research on language and society. The Journal of Sociolinguistics is becoming more and more international in scope. In the last few years, under Monica Heller's term, there has been an increase in international collaboration among authors, as well as regional author diversity. To take this further, we have expanded the disciplinary, geographical, and linguistic reach of the journal's editorial team and editorial board. We have made a conscious effort to build an international editorial team with associate editors located, for example, in Sri Lanka, Mozambique, and Brazil, and an editorial board with global reach, which includes many scholars from underrepresented regions, such as Latin America or Africa. We trust that this will help to bring multiple voices, multiple languages, and multiple sociolinguistic perspectives that will enrich and decenter an increasingly international field of study. As a journal, we're also committed to support the authors with their contributions and be constructive along the review process. And we have to learn a lot about this, how to do this. Even in cases of desk rejection, we try to communicate our recommendation in a helpful way by giving reasons and details about our decision. We believe in dialogue and don't construct our initial recommendation based on a single person's evaluation, but together with members of the editorial team, which in turn reflects diverse backgrounds, contexts, languages, and perspectives. We are also trying to make the review process as transparent as possible and present our guidelines for authors as explicit as we can. We believe that this is a challenge that should be addressed by all the journals in our field. This year, the journal celebrates its 25th anniversary, being a sought-after platform for cutting-edge research in the field of sociolinguistics and publishing research that have pushed the disciplinary boundaries and stimulated sociolinguistic theories and methods. Given the technological, political, economic, and ecological developments over the past 25 years, the relationship between language and society is now even more evident and continues to fuel new sociolinguistic research around the globe. We recognize that academic journals and our universities as well have become more and more embedded in the logics of capitalism, and it is becoming very difficult to democratize and decolonize knowledge through the work we do. Despite these difficult times, we will try our best, and we have already started conversations with the publisher in relation to the expansion of the open access policy, language support for authors, among other initiatives, as my colleagues have been saying for other journals. We're also committed to moving at least on some fronts by promoting discussion on alternative approaches, alliances, and collaboration for academic publishing. Fueled by our own backgrounds and trajectories, we would like to broaden the spectrum of authors, readers, and contexts, and diversify the topics, approaches, views, and format. I think that the Journal of Sociolinguistics receives maybe more manuscripts than other journals in our field. It receives, last year it received 280 manuscripts. And it accepts around 20% to 28% of the manuscripts that come in. So maybe we can talk more after the other colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Virginia. And now we have a team from one of the newest journals on the roster, Language, Culture, and Society. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Kira, and happy to be here. So we are the new kids on the block. And of course, when you set up a new journal, you always wonder, but there's already so many great journals. So what do we have to add to what's going on? So actually, the way I'm going to present the journal will be very different from my colleagues because we actually try to be disruptive in the way we engage with academic labor, with the metrics of academic journals. We don't want, or at least we want to problematize the metrics. And it's always very hard because a journal is both an academic endeavor and it's also an economic endeavor. And of course, a lot of people, a lot of scholars rely on journals to actually get promotion. And so it's it's very complicated. So we are in a great position. I think it's a fabulous position of setting up a new journal, which is actually fantastic. It comes with a lot of challenges. And I would say our journal is explicitly political in the sense that we want to interrogate each part of the process of academic labor. We do it in our own way of functioning, and Alfonso will talk about it. We have, as I said, a very explicit political agenda. So we are not about reifying positivist approach to knowledge. Okay, we want to disrupt the academic labor in the way we interact with our authors, in the way we do the reviewing process, in the way we think of ourselves as gatekeepers or not, because I mean, editors are gatekeepers. I mean, let's be honest. So how do we problematize that? We want to engage on the critical, we want authors to have a critical stance on the ways in which they engage with knowledge, with epistemologies. We did a special issue on the production of knowledges, and we are setting up a call on the politics of publishing. So we are in this kind of dynamics to rethink the way we collectively participate in the how can I say, the reproduction of forms of power, even within our own disciplines and in the academy, in the publishing business. So it's a very, as I said, it's a very explicit political agenda. So I'll give it to Alfonso so he can explain the way we function.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. So basically we are 4 editors, Cécile, Cécile Vigouroux, Miguel Perez Milans, and Patricia Baquedano, and me. I'm Alfonso del Percio. So we have this, we are trying to put in practice this agenda on 2 levels. It's clear that in terms of research agenda that we are promoting, we want to publish a scholarship that politicizes language and that puts inequality, political economy, and colonialism at the center of analysis. This is what we are interested in. This is the intellectual contribution that we want to make to the field. So our objective is to put these social processes at the center of our debate. This is the first level. The second intervention that we want to make, and Cécile has already addressed this, is the way we produce, to rethink the way we produce academic labor, both in terms of how we do publishing. So how do we function as a member of the publishing industry? Because I think we shouldn't forget that we are active part of this. So our publishing house is Benjamin's, which is not a non-profit organization. And so how do we rethink academic labor from within the structure of this economy? So the way we do that is that we basically work for free. We are not functioning according to a hierarchized system. We initially were asked to have the classical system of editor and associate editors, and we managed to get rid of that when we renegotiated the contract last year. So we are working as a team, as a collective of 4 editors, trying to share the work as equally as possible and to support each other in times of difficulty. We are also, our objective is not to reject any papers. So we don't look for rejections. So our objective is to work with whatever author wants to publish their work with us and to turn their paper into a publishable paper. So that does not mean that we don't reject. We do a lot. And this is mainly due to the fact that our title, the title of the journal is a bit misleading: Language, Culture, and Society. We get a lot of Worfian-oriented papers, which is not in line with the type of academic agenda that we want to put forward. So if you are in that kind of tradition, which is completely legitimate and interesting, don't submit your paper in our journal, because you're gonna immediately reject that. For everybody else, our objective is really to work with each author. So what does that mean? We are taking a lot of time to provide extensive reviews and feedback. So of course we have 2 external reviewers, but each paper is also reviewed at least by one of us, in some cases by 2 of us. And we really try to work close with our authors to really improve the paper. This also makes that we can't say anything about the length of the process, because sometimes it takes 4 months, sometimes it takes more than a year, because we really there is this work that we are doing. So this is, I think, yes. So so we are launching a pilot project, and our publishing house is not very happy about this, but we want to de-anonymize the review process and make the review process transparent. So we are trying to think about how to do this. There's going to be a pilot issue. We are testing different models. So first of all, we are going to have an issue where we invite different members of this community to think with us about what it means to review, and to take then that input as a starting point to change the way we manage and do the review process. But it's clear that the objective will be that we are going to de-anonymize at least. So that's going to be the minimum of that we want to achieve, the de-anonymize the review process, and we will take into account all the consequences that this will have in terms of our place within the economy of publishing.
I just want to add about the de-anonymizing of the review process. We want to make the review process very transparent, and we also want to have reviewers accountable. Make them accountable for what they say about about the paper. So that's what we are trying to do. Patricia, do you want to add anything?
Hi, yes, I am here in the ether world. Hi, it's good to see you all. What a fabulous start of the conference. Thank you, colleagues, for in the introduction to our journal, which is really new. I just want to add a comment to what has been said. And yes, that the whole idea of trying to rethink how we do publishing, how we engage in publishing is part of it's a central goal in our work. To me, as also as an editor, it's what drew me to the journal and to this group of wonderful colleagues was also to do something to fight the erasure of people of color in the publishing, in the editorial work. And so to me, it's always a challenge to bring back a voice, to, in many ways, to introduce a voice that has been silenced in the structures of power that we have had over the past 100 years in our field. So very excited to be part of this. And it's a tremendous responsibility to try to steer us away or into a new way of thinking about how to think about language in a world of language, in a world of power and erasure of voices. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So interesting. Now let me turn to language and society. And I believe we have Susan Ehrlich and Tommaso Milani, the two co-editors online.
Yes. Thanks, Kira. I'm going to speak for a couple of minutes and then Tommaso will take over. We have a PowerPoint. Thanks, Kira, for organizing this and for inviting us. Tommaso Milani and I took over as co-editors of Language and Society at the beginning of 2020. The journal, as everybody knows, I'm sure, is published by Cambridge University Press, and we publish 5 issues a year. We don't have associate editors. There were associate editors before we took over, but because there are 2 of us as co-editors, we eliminated the associate editor role. Next slide, please. As you know, in terms of the history of the journal, it was established by Del Hymes in 1972. And in fact, the journal celebrated its 50th anniversary last year in 2021. I think in a number of ways that we're continuing the legacy of Hymes in that he saw the journal as showcasing research on all aspects of language as part of social life, but most importantly, research that leads to a reconstruction of social theory in the light of linguistic methods and findings and of linguistic theory on a social basis. Next slide, please. What we would say about that is that we are interested in publishing empirically grounded articles that aim to push both linguistic and social theory in new and exciting directions. So, for example, we're not particularly interested in articles that are empirically interesting, but don't show any or show little or no theoretical advancement of sociolinguistics in a broad sense. And conversely, we're not so interested in theoretical essays without any kind of empirical grounding. Next slide, please, Tommaso. And again, continuing with the tradition of the journal, we publish in a wide range of areas within sociolinguistics, broadly defined. So variation of sociolinguistics, critical discourse analysis, conversation analysis, linguistic anthropology. As an example of some of the work that we've published recently in linguistic anthropology, we have our special issue in 2021 was guest edited by Charles Zuckerman, and it investigated the use of generics and generic references as a key analytic for thinking about language and social life. And all of the contributors, perhaps with the exception of one, are linguistic anthropologists. But just to say that we do publish a wide range of work in linguistic anthropology. I mean, this particular issue, interestingly, is focused on propositional meaning or referential meaning, whereas, of course, linguistic anthropologists are mostly interested in indexical meanings. So I'm going to turn it over to Tommaso, who's going to talk about some changes that we've instituted.
And we don't have much time, but when Susan and I took over, we realized that although Himes himself in 1972 said that the journal should be very international and should showcase the variety of perspectives from many regions in the world, realized that the journal is still very much, US-centric and Anglo-centric, and so we are pushing towards more submissions and more publications that take Southern decolonial perspectives. Moreover, the journal has also been quite logocentric, with a focus on language understood in a very narrow way as spoken or written words, whereas we welcome more submissions that engage with multimodality and also that engage with affect and embodiment, again, from a variety of theoretical and methodological perspectives. In terms of redressing geopolitical imbalances, we have expanded the editorial board, reshuffled the editorial board. We have expanded the pool of reviewers, so that, again, kind of similarly to what Journal of Sociolinguistics is trying to do, to publish like different articles, different forms of writing. And also, again, we have quite an exciting lineup of special issues edited by scholars who are located, let's say, broadly in outside the Anglo-centric cause of the world. So we have a special issue on temporal landscapes, edited by Michel Lazan, on multimodal diversity, edited by Ignacio Clemente Pesudo, and a special issue on the sociolinguistics of hope, edited by Rodrigo Borba and Daniel Silva. One thing we should mention is that we have so submissions for special issues are now need to be sent to us at a specific deadline. We consider all submissions in one and the same go. So they are reviewed. We send them out for peer review. And also we have discussion pieces. I completely sympathize with Alfonso and Cécile and the problem of reproducing certain problematic positivist ideologies by showing stats. I have a couple, so these numbers have to be taken with a pinch of salt. So like Journal of Sociolinguistics, we have quite a number of submissions per year. So in 2021, it's actually 256 rather than 242. And of course, and we have tried to cut down on the turnaround time from submission to first decision. So typically this is because we, like other journals, we have a very high desktop rejection. So typically you would hear from us within 7 days if it's a desktop rejection. But so typically the average time from submission to first decision is around like a month, I would say. Submission by country, so still there are many submissions from the US, and here there are lots of submissions from China, but these are also, you have to consider that these are also book reviews. And then here a bit of stats about from production received. This means from when the manuscript has been copy edited, when it appears on first view, and it is approximately 43 days. Also, we have increased now from 2022 the number of pages of for each issue. So, so the number of manuscripts per issue will actually increase. And here, I thank you.
I just wanted to add one more thing that I forgot to mention. Brian King is our book editor from University of Hong Kong.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And last but not least, certainly, Science and Society. And I believe Asif Agha, the editor, is here with us too.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Asif. I'm the editor of Science and Society. Our journal is published by the University of Chicago Press, and we are connected to Hankook University in Korea as well as to the Semiotics Lab at the University of Pennsylvania. So we really view ourselves as a global outfit, on which I'll say more in a moment. Ours is a relatively new journal. We're just about 9 years old. In fact, we didn't even have a Claravit ranking until last year. And let's see, we publish 3 issues a year, one of which is usually a special issue. Ours is an open access journal, so there are no subscriptions or fees involved. An internet connection gives you access to everything, which also means that everyone around the world has access to our materials, regardless of membership in any professional organization, access to library subscriptions or anything of that kind. The journal's founding editor was Richard Parmentier, who edited the journal from 2013 to 2017. He was on sabbatical during 2016, during which time he found guest editors for 2 of the issues.
Asif?
Yes, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me fine?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Okay, someone's calling out my name and I was a bit puzzled by that. Anyway, so anyway, I became the editor in 2018. We don't have any associate editors, and I am responsible for all article appraisal and managing the peer review process. We do have a managing editor, Linda Ko, who takes care of production issues and communication with the University of Chicago Press. Now, we are an interdisciplinary journal in the humanities and social sciences. We don't focus only on linguistic anthropology. However, 12 of the last 20 articles we published are from linguistic anthropologists. And we don't confine ourselves to scholars based in the United States. In fact, we get contributions from all over the place. From the point of view of contributors, one of my goals is to bring American linguistic anthropologists into conversation with a range of types of work being done worldwide. And from the point of view of subject matter, the social world as we know it is constituted by forms of discursive semiosis. That is what our articles describe. Now, the journal is international in scope. We encourage work from junior scholars, including graduate students who publish in our pages all the time. We publish stuff that is based on historical and archival sources, as well as on ethnographic fieldwork-based materials, or combining the two. We get solicit work from traditionally defined fields such as anthropology, linguistics, archaeology, art history, classics, literary studies, religious studies, science and technology studies, and so forth, as well as emerging fields such as digital humanities and global studies. Our title, Science and Society, implies that contributors will study social processes of some sort by taking semiotic data as the lens, as the empirically grounded lens through which it is to be examined, and will situate the process in some set of historical circumstances or a period, or in some particular set of textual artifacts. And the materials that people write about in our pages are drawn, as I said, from face-to-face interaction, from technologically mediated forms of mass communication, from various kinds of semiotic codes involving language, behavior, pictorial codes as well, and then also various kinds of linguistic and textualized complexes, such as museums and archives, bureaucracies and governments, organizations and economies, and the rest of it. As long as you're grounded in some identifiable social process in any such domain, and you can track it semiotically and explain how it unfolds and what it does to the world around it, we're interested. So we, despite this whole range that I've described, let me emphasize, we're very keen on articles in linguistic anthropology. It's just that we also do other things. And in fact, I urge you to submit your articles to the journal. We do publish one special issue a year, and we especially solicit panels from scholarly conferences to get published. So if you thought your SLA panel was good, get in touch with me. We have a special issue slot open for next year. In terms of our various metrics, we get about 60 or so articles submitted each year. Our acceptance rate is around 20%. And the time from submission to appraisal is about 3 months. Time to publication can vary depending on whether it's a revise or resubmit, or which issue you are targeting your article for example, a special issue, which may not be the next issue, and so forth. The publication format is research articles only. We don't publish book reviews. We don't publish any essays or anything else. The only variation is that sometimes we do publish one special issue a year. We recommend that articles be about 8,000 words long maximum, though we can usually work with that maximum a little bit. We're somewhat flexible. And then in terms of our metrics, our impact factor is 1.452. Our site score is 2.3. And in terms of ranking, we get ranked in multiple ways. So because we are this kind of interdisciplinary journal, so we are ranked 38 out of the 88 anthropology journals, but we're also ranked 58 out of 1,037 cultural studies journals. So it's, you know, it's all over the place. Anyway, those are the main things that I wanted to tell you about. And if you have any questions, we can get to those in the Q&A. Yes?
So much, Asif. And yes, about that Q&A, I think we'll begin it now. We have, I mean, I think this is a wonderful opportunity. It certainly is for me to have so many editors from such an impressive slate of journals here with us today. So I just want to open up questions to the audience here, to our Zoom audience. If you're asking a question here, I'd like to encourage you to go up and use that mic so you can be heard also over in the Gather world and on Zoom. But obviously we've discussed such a range of things and there are so many questions. So all questions, of course, are good questions. So please ask away. Anyone?
There are questions from Zoom, Kira.
Wonderful. You want to lead those?
So Jaspal was the first one. So Jaspal Singh.
Thank you, Tommaso. Thanks so much. Hello, everybody. My name is Jaspal. So I have a question about this question of native speakers of English and the hegemony of English. So all editors present today seem to agree that we need to commit ourselves to democratization, internationalization, or decolonization, depending on what angle you're coming from. And that means supporting scholars from the global South. And I think this is a very important development indeed. And I also think that this particular thing has to do with sort of deconstructing or disinventing English or the hegemony of English in the global contemporary academy. But how is this done in actual practice? Now, Rodrigo at the beginning gave a couple of insights into the editorial processes of gender and language and how this actually works in gender and language, namely by supporting non-native writers of English. And I had some discussions with some of you on this panel today also about translating abstracts into sort of minoritized languages and the dangers of representation of language as sort of a tokenistic exercise. But what do you think are the next steps, the next concrete steps that we or you could take to make academic publishing more representative? Would you, for instance, consider hiring professional translators who would translate texts from, let's say, Spanish, Portuguese, French, just to name the sort of global colonial languages, into English to make them accessible for sort of an English international readership? Thank you.
Thank you, Jasper. Very important question. Would anyone like to respond?
Well, I can speak to some aspects of that. We actually get publications from people, lots of writers whose native language is not English. And when that happens, and if the article is good, then I actually personally work through it and help with the editorial process. I do massive editing, including helping with getting the English prose up and so forth. We don't have the money to hire translators, although it's a terrific idea, but we just can't afford it. So that's not really feasible for us. And the fact is that many of the people who are writing, because English is their second language, as long as they're connected to an understanding of language structure and use and forms of discursive semiosis, then they often call attention to all kinds of data that, involving processes happening in other languages and other places. So I suppose those are the things that I think I can say that are relevant to your question.
Yeah, thanks, Jasper. I do think that this question needs to be addressed maybe also from another perspective, because there are also, of course, it sounds very good, but there is maybe an oversimplification of the problem, right? In the sense of, so who do we get then? So who is the one whose text is then gonna be proofread? And what kind of, in what kind of ordering processes do we get into, right? So we all agree that there is no such thing like a native speaker, but then we identify the non-native speakers whose texts need to be corrected. We also need to understand that this copy editing is labor and it costs a lot of money. So there are two ways out, which are both problematic. Namely, we do it for free, or we pay for it. And then if we pay for it, then it's only those journals who have a lot of money and have very powerful publishing houses who can do it. And we tend to kind of reproduce exactly those structures which maybe we would want to disrupt. So I think our approach is another one, and namely to rethink also as publishers what counts as legitimate academic language. And then not only in terms of kind of translation, right? So let's just make sure that everybody can publish in whatever language they want, but rather to really rethink what is the register that we consider to be academic. both in terms of what is publishable and also in terms of what is considered to be desirable in terms of as a reader. And of course, we are trying, so I said before that we are working for free, which is not exactly true. What we're doing is that we're trying to use the money that we get to see whether we can use it for exactly those sorts of activities. But seriously, paying somebody to copy, edit a text costs a lot of money. And if we don't spend that money, it's exploitation. I think we need to be very, very clear about that.
Just to clarify, Alfonso, I assume you're meaning to edit a text rather than copy edit, because copy edit is more like also putting the tags that then become like typeset.
Just correcting, turning non-standard language into something that is considered to be acceptable.
No problem. Patricia, would you like to also reply to this question? Sorry, Ricky, it's just that I assume that Patricia wants to reply.
Thank you. Yes, and I was shy to keep my raised hand or to raise my hand, and but I just wanted to say that here we have a fabulous opportunity. We have publishing houses represented by journals here. Some of us, like at John Benjamin's, we get a little bit of a stipend for this, for our journals. And what would it take for us to come together? I don't know if share resources, but at least talk to our publishing houses and, coordinate at least some of these decisions as to whether we're going to publish one issue or one article in a language other than English, for example, or how do we channel resources together? I mean, that's one way of thinking about it, to begin to shift how the publishing houses, how the journals manage their money and see us or use our labor and free labor sometimes. So just a thought. It still doesn't get us out of the main problem, but at least we can begin to we can continue to talk to each other about those resources. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from the audience.
I'm Chase Ladusa from Hamilton College. I just had a quick comment. It doesn't address the kinds of topics that Alfonso was talking about, but the situation I know anything about is in India, where in India, some universities are now taking it upon themselves to translate texts from English. For example, at Azam Premji University, there's an effort to translate texts into Kannada and Hindi and Bangla. Journal editors might think about whether there's interest at such places to have, the work that we have published in English into those languages. There are still problems, of course, of standardization practices and registers of language and all of the issues that have been mentioned here quite rightly. But there are efforts out there. They're highly uneven. They're quite localized, but many of us have such connections, and we might make good on them.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's a very important topic, but I think we need to think beyond the journals and to see how we function as academics. And if promotion committees keep relying on publish and perish, why do people feel compelled to write in English? Okay, because there are metrics associated to that. It determines somebody's promotion, career, and stuff like that. So we cannot think of these issues, of these publishing issues, outside the system of academia. And we can publish, in indigenous languages, in French, in whatever you want. And for me, that would be cosmetic if we don't change the system that, so yes, for diversity, but at the same time, if we don't change the structures in which, we all take part and that we ratify by doing business as we do, nothing will change.
You first.
Well, I really think that, hearing all the colleagues in this roundtable, I think that one good thing is that we are in the same page, right? We've said things that are similar. I agree with Cécile when she said that we have to go beyond academia and has to do with changing the system. But I also would like to say that this is not restricted to the language, to English, right? We're talking about conventions. We're talking about conventions related to the production of academic knowledge, which is always contested. So I don't think the solution, I think it's great that these corporations could give money to do translations, right? But it's not a solution. So it has to do with, identifying a good potential story from authors, right? And kind of support them beyond the English, right? And I don't know how to do that, but I think that's a good, important thing to think about. And also it's not a solution to publish abstracts it's also cosmetic. I think we do it in the Journal of Sociolinguistics, and it's something that it's okay, but it's something very superficial, I think. So we have to keep thinking about this.
I just would mention the translations that are being done at Indian universities are being done by themselves for free.
I just want to add to what Virginia just said, like identifying good stories from authors and then invest on that despite the academic conventions and try to work within and maybe against the academic conventions, which is what Alfonso and Cécile are trying to do. But we've been doing that quite closely, not just with non-native speakers, but also with English speakers, because speaking English is not a guarantee that you are a good writer, isn't it? So we work quite a lot because we see the submission process, the publication process, as I said, as a learning curve to everyone involved, to the authors and also to the editors. But I in terms of what concrete actions that Paul just mentioned, I think Brazil is a good example in terms of academic publishing. All journals are open access, so anyone can access them. Of course, now there is this demand for publishing in English, but most people are still publishing in Portuguese, and everything is open access. Another possible way is to invest in working papers. I am now in a project with Ben Rampton, Miguel Perez Milans, and a bunch of other people with the working papers in urban language and literature, which from King's College. And that's a wonderful outlet to publish also papers. And then why don't we start citing papers, published in this kind of working papers that go outside of the capitalist publication system? That's one way. That's one way out.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Catherine Rhodes, University of New Mexico. Thank you for all these wonderful ideas, and as a good anthropologist, I like the multifaceted approach. Let's go at it from many different angles, because I think there are many different problems. But I'm also wondering if there might be a discussion about what kinds of developmental resources we could provide to people who are working in languages other than English, who want to develop their own editorial resources. So I have colleagues who want to create a press in Yucatec Maya, want to publish books and articles, and they don't really know how to do that yet. They're working on creating the financial and institutional foundations for it, but they need to better understand the professional development capacity, how to go about that. How do you pick reviewers? How do you set up an editorial? And so I think thinking about that too, how can we diversify who's participating in these structures that need to be changed? And in the process, perhaps change the structures as well. So I don't know if anyone has thoughts on that, but I'd love to hear them if you do. Thank you.
Would anyone like to respond?
So is the question, can I ask you to repeat the question? Is it about how to share the knowledge of the editorial process outside of these kinds of elite niches that are already existing? Yeah. I mean, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think a lot of people, I mean, I'm just going to say what I feel that it's on my mind. I think that from the perspective of the Journal of Linguistic Anthropology, there's so much that we have to learn in terms of creating these collaborative networks. So I think you're raising an important question about the next step. I feel that journals are so limited in resources. I mean, I think that's the part that's not transparent in terms of like, but I mean, one of the things that can begin is by extending peer-reviewed networks so that I think, for example, Christy Davis also works with in an interdisciplinary way for book reviews and you know, I don't know if you want to speak to that, but creating networks through the peer review process and through the submission process might be one way. But I really, I appreciate your question. Yeah, I don't know. Does anybody else want to chime in?
Yeah, so maybe at least what was new for me when I started this adventure is that we have a bit of a romanticized understanding of what a journal is. And I mean, it's not only that, but it's also an economic business. So often many things that we want to do and have in mind are simply not possible because our publishing houses have very clear understandings of how things have to be done. So also about who does these things. So as academics, we had to learn to change the way we do things because it's an academic business, but not just an academic business. So what we are trying to do, and I think, so this is also a bit what, you know, this group that is here of all these editors is, there is an attempt, so in terms of trying to transform the structures, to see whether, so if you want to put it in economic terms, to not see each other as competitors, but to see whether we can promote alliances across editorial boards to put pressure on our publishing houses, which is not evident, which is not easy, and also to just collectively at least start talking about how we could do things differently. So it's really an intellectual job, but there is also another side, and that we are not maybe very prepared to do. And I think, or I can just speak about me and us, about our journal. Yeah.
Can I just chip in a piggyback on what Alfonso said? You know, one thing that is important to remember that might not be known to people in the audience, that the different publishers have very different ways of handling things, and they have very different constraints. So to give a very concrete example, Cambridge University Press is allegedly, so in Language Society, should not be, it's a non-profit activity, right? Because then all the money gets that the journal earns, then once all the production costs have been taken out, then it gets sent into Cambridge University, right? So, but we have huge constraints in terms of page numbers, whereas to the best of my knowledge, and that's what Monica Heller told me, and Virginia Zavala, you can confirm or dispute what I'm saying, whereas Wiley Blackwell instead seems to have given carte blanche in terms of number of pages. So which also means that, okay, if Susan and I want to do something very different, say, have different types of articles, different types of writing, those different types of writings will need to compete then in terms of page numbers with the more traditional articles, right? So it would mean that we would not be able to publish as many more kind of traditional articles. So what I'm saying this because exactly what I completely agree with Alfonso, we should actually at some point try and bring all these publishers together and somehow actually talk to each other about these differences because they affect us in very, very different ways, right? There's also a question, from I'm not sure whether other editors want to add something, but there is a question from Zoom. There's someone with, Ricky has had their hand up for quite a long time.
Hi there. Thank you so much. My question actually is for you, Tommaso. You mentioned that there are some special issues, some calls for papers. So there was a multimodal issue that looked interesting. And I went to the website for Language and Society and I didn't see it anywhere. Is there a place where we can find this information? Because it sounds great. And this has been a great conversation. I feel like my question is so simple now.
So just a clarification. So these are special issues that have been, whose proposal have been accepted. So there is no call for papers out. So it's just this is just yeah.
Got it.
So
okay.
So we have what we call call for papers is a call for papers to submit special issues, and typically we consider all special issues in Language and Society up around beginning mid of July. So when all special issues proposal get sent at more or less at the same time and get assessed at the same time by reviewers who are members of the editorial board.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That was helpful.
I just wanted to mention, this is going back to the earlier comment. So Wiley, I forgot to mention the Journal of Linguistic Anthropology, our publisher is Wiley. And just as of this issue, we now have unlimited pages. So this is actually radically changing. You'll see the next issue will be big and the next ones and the next ones. So we're actually, I'm still wrapping my head around this, but I think this is going to fast pace the journal production process. And I think that in terms of early career scholars, this will be very useful in terms of us being able not just to get articles out in early view, but to actually have them out. But the other side to this is that we're no longer, after this year, going to have journals in print. It's all going to be online. And then the last thing is that the real horizon is about open access, whether or not a journal can afford open access. And I think that these are the real, there's still a lot of negotiations going on, but there are journals that are wealthier than others. And I agree that working together to share knowledge would help us move toward a more equitable future, which I think is through open access.
So Sonia's comment reminded me to kind of focus a little bit on early career scholars. And I'm wondering if we have some people in the audience who are considering submitting a paper to one of these journals and who have some kind of specific questions about that process. Anybody?
There's someone on Zoom. Sorry, Brittany.
Yeah, hi, I am a grad student at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. I am looking to submit my first manuscript this semester. And I'm finding the process of deciding what journal specifically a little overwhelming. So I was given the advice to look at the editors and whose work you most closely align with, which would be Language and Society. But I'd love any input on just like, how do you pick the first journal or the first journal to submit to? And please don't do matrix, because I don't care about that kind of stuff necessarily as much as the fit.
Shall I start replying since Language Society was mentioned?
Please.
Okay, so I guess for us, for a journal like Language and Society, so we we welcome articles that really are empirically interesting, theoretically, innovative, and kind of handled with the big question, So, and I'm not trying to scare you. It depends. It's always so difficult to say whether an article is a good fit. But if your article is trying to really make a big contribution to the field and trying to make a big argument, then it's Language Society is the journal for you. Whereas instead, if you try to make like perhaps a more, let's say, an empirically interesting argument, perhaps other journals might be a better fit. Sorry, I'm being very vague because I don't know what your article is about, and so, but do write to us. We certainly have conversations with authors even before they submit. And of course we cannot say whether the article will be accepted or not, but we can certainly have a more detailed conversation about whether the article that you have written is a good fit for Language and Society or not.
And that was a kind of a follow-up question too, was I've read that it's good to reach out to the editors, but I have every single person I talk to here at my university is like, oh, I don't do that. So I'm like, so do people really reach out to editors? Is that a good thing, or is it kind of annoying? So that answered my question on that.
Can I just add a couple of things? Yeah, I mean, it depends on what. So if it's just an email saying, would this topic interest you? Then our usual reply is, well, it's not detailed enough for me to even assess it right now. But if you send an abstract or like a longer abstract, then certainly that helps. So I don't think it's annoying at all. I mean, I'm not speaking on behalf of all other journal editors, but I mean, Susan and I are definitely have had these emails, where people kind of write to us and we reply and we say, often just submitted the article and then we'll take it from there. Also because, as I said, I mean, we are quite fast in at least getting back to you, saying if we have to say, no, actually, it's not a good fit. So within 7 days, you will know it. And then you take your article and you send it somewhere else, And we often also actually suggest other journals which we believe are a better home for your piece, right? So again, like with the Journal of Social Linguistics, Susan and I write quite detailed emails for desktop rejections, explaining why the article is not a good fit. And we often say that the article is very good, the article is very interesting, but it's not really good for Language and Society.
Thank you.
We also get quite a lot of emails questioning us about the fit of articles. So we usually get abstracts, and then if it's a nice article, if it is about gender from the perspective that we follow, we encourage publication. But what I would like to tell Brittany is that it's also important to talk to your peers who have submitted papers to other journals and ask them about their experience in submitting. None of the journals here are, of course, all the journals here welcome people and, well, with open arms. But some journals are quite difficult. And for your first experience in publishing, that might be hard. I was just talking to one of the grad students here who organized the conference, and they told me that their first experience submitting to a paper was simply traumatizing because the reviews were awful. And now they are having a paper published in Gender and Language, and they said, I couldn't believe my eyes because you were very supportive. So talk to your peers, to your professors, and ask about the publication experience. That's also something that you should also take into consideration.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Lee, and I'm trying to think about publishing a review paper on the intersection of semantic and social meaning. And I'm just interested for the people who do publish review papers to talk a little bit about the best way to approach that, wondering whether you need to be solicited in order to write a review paper, or can you reach out about it, and kind of what the best way to go about that process is to see if you can get published.
Gender and Language publishes review papers, but only yearly review papers. So it's a review of the field in itself, and those who write those essays are invited by the editors. So other than that, we don't publish review papers.
I mean, so I know Rebecca Lee because she's one of our wonderful PhD students here at the University of Colorado Boulder. And I think you kind of understated your paper. So it's not just a review paper. It's a paper that's bringing two fields into conversation that have rarely been in conversation. And so my first suggestion to you would be not to undersell your review, but to really showcase the significance of what you're bringing into conversation. And to approach editors with that significance first and foremost, because I think editors often have a reaction to a review paper because we don't really know what that means. But of course, what you're doing is way more than a review paper. So, but perhaps someone else has.
Well, if I can share my own experience, I recently published a paper like a review paper. It was a follow-up paper of the paper I wrote about 10 years ago, and I submitted it to one journal, and they said it wasn't a good fit. It happens, right? So then I sent it to somebody else, saying that the other journal said that this was like a review, so they didn't want to publish it. But then the other journal, they just took it, and it came out in an online publication within a week. So I think it's nice to talk to that editor about, like Tommaso was just saying, send your abstract or a bit of detailed information. If Kira says your work is great, I trust it's great. Yeah, so I think you need to not to be shy, and and I think Jasper said something nice in the chat. So it was addressed to Brittany, but you think about which journals you cite in your own work, and these are the journals you probably want to send your a piece to. Yeah. Thank you.
We have about 10 more minutes. Do we have another question from the floor? Yes.
Hi, sorry, I'm not tall enough for this. Kate Hyatt, I'm from UCL, University College London, and my question kind of relates to the conversation that was happening before. I was wondering how your individual journals think about the idea of publishing translations, like edited translations. I asked this because a colleague of mine, we're putting together a translation edition at the moment, translating from French to English, and we're coming across a lot of issues. There's a lot of copyright issues we have to go through. We have to, we're also coming up against a lot of the issues that Alfonso raised before about, you know, who is this work falling on? Like, I'm an early career researcher, I'm a postdoc. So me and my colleague, we're doing the work, other early career researchers, they're doing the translation. So who the kind of work of translation falls on. And specifically because this work of translation tends to go really uncredited. And what we're trying to do is specifically raise these questions through this publication that we hope we're going to get out at some point. But you know, what was said before about the the translations happening in India, it's really interesting. But I'm also thinking about how all of that work is going really unrecognized. And then, yeah, so it's a lot of labor, a lot of unnoticed, unrecognized labor, and you know, how we could potentially think about making it more inviting for people who have the skills that could, you know, translation skills. How could we make it so that they want to spend their time engaging in translations in a way that they don't feel is a waste of time, so to speak. Thanks. Sure.
Virginia?
So I don't know if I understood well your question. You referring to translating into English original articles in other languages that are worthwhile kind of spreading, something like that?
Yeah, I mean, that was specific to the case that I was referring to, but more generally, I mean, it doesn't strike me as something particularly common, at least in the journals that I'm familiar with, to say, take the work of XYZ scholar from, or like a Hindi scholar, for example, and just get an entire publication where, there are translations, there are commentaries, there are reflections, all of these things. It doesn't strike me as some, occasionally we get books like that, but as a journal practice, it's not something I've noticed that much.
Yeah. I mean, we don't do that in the Journal of Sociolinguistics, but we have been publishing, for example, a thematic series about decentering the Anglosphere, with pieces about scholars, for example, in non-Anglo context and how they have contributed to sociolinguistics within their contexts. And we have several pieces about that. We are planning as well podcasts about book reviews that have not been published in English. But the translation, the phenomenon that you're talking about is a different thing. And I'm going to think more about that. I don't know if there are some colleagues that can comment on that.
Yeah, I was thinking of maybe a way to being recognized is not just through the translation process, but engaging with the text by, that many times when you read literature in other languages, the translator engages with the text. And so the translation can be the beginning of a conversation and not just the process of translation. I think, and we would be very happy to, engage with text like that.
So actually at the beginning of when we started the journal, we had the idea of doing exactly that, what you're mentioning, Katie. So the idea to take texts which circulate in non-English language studies, English-speaking language studies, and to translate them back into English and to make them available for an English-speaking audience. And we are still thinking about that, but we encountered some unexpected complications. So we did that with so our kind of important first milestone text, which is by Silvia Rivera Cusicanqui, which we wanted to have in English. And it was interesting because she didn't really, she was not interested in that text to be translated into English. So it, so it's again, so who benefits, which, so that's why we have disinvested a little bit this, but it's still kind of on our mind. And as Cécile says, translation, but also engagement. Since we know each other, one way out, but it's not a solution, is make sure that it's not early career scholars who have to translate the texts. Voila, maybe.
Hi, my name is Chloe Willis. I'm a PhD student at UC Santa Barbara. I know that we're kind of running out of time, so I'll rephrase this more as a comment than a question. I was really heartened to hear the number of voices who are concerned with problematizing the peer review process and with issues of like inclusion and diversity in editing and publishing. I was going to ask you all to speak a little bit more about the kind of way that financial and other sort of material resources are distributed in this process, because kind of throughout these different conversations, I heard different comments about, unpaid labor or underpaid labor. And I do find it a bit troubling that these publishing companies are essentially profiting off of at times unpaid or underpaid labor that we are expected to do as a part of, the tenure track and hiring process. And I was hoping to hear you all speak a little bit about any steps that are being taken towards addressing those issues at all, but yeah, thank you.
Well,
To be perfectly honest, the Society of Linguistic Anthropology actually provides a stipend for the editor of the Journal of Linguistic Anthropologists. So this is not unpaid labor for me. But that is something that we are very privileged to be able to enjoy. We have a $5,000 per year funding for copy editing. Each article costs about $1,000. So that's about 5 articles a year that we can use for copy editing. And then everything else in terms of wanting to go open access is there's no more funding for that. So that's just to give you the statistics from the Journal of Linguistic Anthropology.
And to add for Language in Society, Susan and I also are not unpaid, also we are paid. So, and we also can offer a stipend to our editorial assistant, Brittany O'Neill, and perhaps Susan can say something more about it, at York University, and Brittany is a PhD student at York University. We have a paid copy editor. So yes, so I guess from our side, you know, there is of course the unpaid labor of peer reviewers, right? That you know, that however is something that is the big elephant in the room, you know, that we all share. But in terms of the people who actually work on the journal, and Susan spends a lot of time, you know, in conversation with authors about the text, you know, we are paid for that time.
Yes, I think it's a very good question, and we need to recognize that we are in an extractive kind of business, and we are not paid. We get 1,000 euros a year. We don't have any teaching release. As a group, yeah, of course, as a group. And yeah, and basically this is about social capital and symbolic capital. Yeah, that's extremely problematic that we are, yeah, the publishing companies are benefiting from our free labor in general. When I tell my parents that I'm not paid when I write an article, I mean, they don't understand. Say, what? You work for free? But that's, you know, and that's probably things we need to discuss, to have a very open conversation, and how we all participate in it, and when enough is enough. I mean, that's, you know, when are we gonna reach our limits as scholars, as academics, and say, no longer this kind of extractive system in which we, you know, all, you know, well, participate.
And with that final comment, I think we'll close this session for today. I want to thank all these wonderful editors for joining us and sharing their ideas. And of course, thanks to the audience for your wonderful questions, both our Zoom virtual audiences and our in-person audience. And I want to encourage all of you to go look at the book exhibit over in the Hilton Garden Inn, the Royal Arch. We're breaking for lunch now, so this might be a great time to go over there. And many of our editors have, their publishers, I guess, have sent us some journal copies, so you can stroll through and look through and find your journal that you're going to submit your next article to. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you.